everybody, and welcome back to Vlog Talk. Today we are going to be making this training stand. This is a floor standing training perch. However, you can alter this to make it whatever size you would like using whatever branches you have available. I personally went for one that is floor standing because I don't have all that many surfaces to rest a training perch onto, and would prefer that I could just pick this up and move it around wherever I need it to be. I also made mine with 2 different levels because I have 2 different birds and would like to be able to train them separately without worrying that the other one's going to try and steal the other bird's treats. So that is again something you can veto from this. It doesn't have to be 2 level, it's just what I personally needed for my 2 birds. A training perch or a training stand is very simply a perch or area that is traditionally a T-shape for your bird to train on. The whole benefit of it is that it's one very clear, concise area where your bird is in the mindset to learn. As opposed to training in their cage or somewhere else different every day, it's one very consistent area for them to be primed and ready to be training. It puts them in the proper headspace to be learning and sets you up for the most success because you won't have other factors and variables that could affect their learning. That being said, training perches are absolutely not necessary. You can also just use the back of a chair or any other perch you have laying around. This is just something that I have to be more convenient for when I'm doing other training throughout the house, so I have a nice, easy, portable perch. With that aside, if you would like to learn how to make this perch, just keep on watching. To start out, you're going to need to go and find some branches. Now, I have a maple tree in my backyard that we had pruned recently, so I have a big cluster of branches that have been freshly chopped off of that tree that we have disinfected, left in the sun, and are ready to be used. When it comes to selecting your tree, make sure you pick one that hasn't had pesticides used on it, doesn't have a lot of molds and moss growing on it, and is generally quite clean. You don't want any branches that have already fallen off the tree that are rotting or mildewy. They should look pretty fresh and healthy. Be sure that whatever branches you pick, you're picking ones that look strong and that have a decent thickness to them per the size of your bird. You want your horizontal perches that they're going to be standing on to be the appropriate width for their feet, and you want whatever perch you choose for the vertical portion to be decently sturdy and relatively straight. You don't want one that's leaning super intensely or has a lot of weird curves in it, because it's going to make it a lot harder for you to have a nice, straight, sturdy training stand that isn't going to wobble all over the place. I will leave links down in the description below for how to properly disinfect and clean branches for this tutorial. I'm not going to be covering that today. I do have a video in the past that I will link as well. Once you have done that and your branches are ready to be used, you can go ahead and prep them. Now, the branches that I am using are maple, so I do need to remove the bark off of them. Make sure you do your research, find a couple different websites that state what branches are safe and which ones aren't, keeping in mind things like tree sap, pollens, leaves, and barks as well, so that way you know whether or not the bark will need to be taken off of your tree. So because my tree is a maple and the bark isn't safe, I am going to remove it. So all I'm going to do is take a sharp knife and gently shave away at the bark until it is all removed. While removing the bark, you're also going to look out for things like bugs or mildew or any other signs of damage that could have happened to the branch. If you see signs of rot, you just want to throw it out, find a healthier branch. There are many branches you can pick. So I'm going to repeat this process for all 4 of the branches. For the design that I have chosen, I will be needing 4 different branches. If you are just making this with one solid perch across, not this dual layer one that I have going on here, you will only actually need 2. You want one of your branches to be as high as you want your stand to be. So if it's standing from the floor, you're going to want something that's about 4 or 5 feet. If you want something that's sitting on a tabletop, you may only want one that's 1 to 2 feet tall. Make your preferences, hold it up, kind of demo it, and see how high you would personally want your branch to be. The one going across you can make as wide or as slim as you want, just watching that the thickness isn't too big. Obviously for my birds, I have one very thick branch for Newt and a very thin branch to accommodate Mia and her much smaller feet. I am not going to be dremeling this or sanding it or in any other way trying to smooth out this branch. I want this to keep those slices on it from me shaving away the bark, because I want that texture. It's going to create good grip. It's going to be healthier for their feet. If you sand it and make it too smooth, you could actually hurt their feet and cause all sorts of sores, similar to the ones you would get from playing on the monkey bars for a little too long. So now that all 4 of these branches are complete, we are going to go ahead and prep the base. I am just using a plain plank of birchwood here, but you can use whatever materials you have on hand. The main thing is just that you want a nice big flat sturdy surface to form as the stability in the base of your stand. All we're going to do here is drill a simple small hole into the base here, because we're going to be screwing this into our longest stick to form the base structure for our training stand. Do make sure that whatever hardware you are using, whatever screws or nails, whatever you choose, that they are either stainless steel or some other bird-safe metal. A lot of construction equipment and screws and nails are not safe for parrots, so you do want to make sure that you double check the materials that you are using. Once you have that hole drilled in the bottom plank of wood, you are also going to be drilling the same sized hole into your tallest stick of wood and connect the two together with a bird-safe screw. And this is going to be forming the base structure for your T-stand. This next step here will be the last step for those of you who only want one level to your training stand, and it's going to be quite simple. All we're going to do is place the horizontal perch platform that you have chosen in front of your vertically standing training stand base, and you're going to tie them together with bird-safe string. I am using paper cording here, but you could also use something like sisal, or you could even use cotton rope if you plan for this to be something that your bird is only using under supervision. Do be cautious with stiffer strings like cotton rope because your bird can chew and loosen those fibers and get some toes caught. So you do want to be sure that you're keeping an eye on those things and making sure that the materials aren't falling apart and fraying over time. How you tie these together is really up to you. You don't have to use a super special method. You can Google search all sorts of knot tying techniques to be able to attach two sticks together and find a lot of success that way. This stage here is what would be done if you only wanted one flat perch for your training stand. If you would like to have the secondary double-decker platform, you can continue on going forwards. For this portion, it's a little bit more difficult because of the branches that I chose. I chose one that's got this forked top, so we had to go ahead and shave away some divots so that way the perch could fit in between these little forked shapes a little more securely. So all we did was take a great big file and shave away these little indents that were going to line up with the vertical perch. Once those were all good and filed in and we could see that they were going to fit nicely, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did for the first perch and wrap some cording around it, making sure that it's going to hold it nice and secure, nice and firm. It's not going to be wiggling, and just tying it however you feel is working best, or looking up some tutorials on how to properly rope tie things together and utilizing those methods to make this as secure as you can. You can do this without a forked top perch. You can just use the straight one and get them to connect the same. However, they might be a little bit more wobbly, which is why we went with one that had more of that forked top. This next part is probably what was the most complicated for us because of the type of branches that we chose. Getting this secondary double-decker portion to connect to the main one using only rope was a little bit more difficult because we didn't want it to be straight up and impacting this branch. You could just as easily have taken the double-decker one and connected it to this main base branch on the bottom here, but we decided to connect it straight to the standing base instead. And how we did that was the same way that we did everything else. We just kind of held it in place, shaved away any shapes that we needed in order to make it fit a little bit smoother, and then wrapped a cord around it over and over and over again until it was firm and sturdy and not going to go anywhere. If this is not sticking, you can absolutely use things like stainless steel screws or other bird-safe equipment to be able to attach them. I just wanted to try and do this with as few power tools and things as possible, just because not everybody has those things laying around, so I wanted to try and assemble the entire thing using just string and wood. Eventually we were able to get the whole thing to stick together and hold together strong enough where we didn't feel like it was going to fall out, and that was it. That was the entire tree stand start to finish. It wasn't too overly complicated to do. As long as you wrap your string extremely tight and hold it really nice and taut while you're wrapping it, it will hold together quite well. Looking up tutorials for how to tie knots and holding things together with rope will serve a lot of benefit in making sure that you are holding things together as securely as possible without wasting a lot of excess material. But that was it. This one was a really quick project for us to do. Even with debarking the entire thing, it probably only took us about 4 hours or so, and debarking it is really what took most of the time. If we hadn't had to remove the bark on our branches or had chosen not to, assembling everything together probably only would have taken no more than an hour. It's a really quick project, especially if you can find branches that are already the size that you're looking for, and all you gotta do is kind of trim the ends and go from there. It ends up being a pretty quick project to put together, and now you have a very helpful training tool in isolating when your training sessions are and when your birds are going to be most ready and eager to learn. So that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for joining me here, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.